caught my wife cheating with my best friend thanks to car Bluetooth. I am Liam Carter, 34 years old, suburban husband, software engineer, lover of boring routines and Sunday barbecues, blissfully unaware that my world was about to implode. It started on a Tuesday. I'd left my car at the shop for a routine checkup, nothing major, just an oil change and some squeaky brakes. My wife, Natalie, offered me her car to get to work. No big deal, we'd swapped cars a dozen times before. Married 8 years, together for 10. Trust was never something I questioned. Natalie was the type of woman people described as charming with a side of mystery. She worked in marketing, always on calls, always networking. I never thought twice about it. Why would I? We had a house, a dog named Jasper, weekend trips to the farmer's market, the picture-perfect life. Or so I thought. So there I was, cruising down Maple Avenue in her sleek little SUV, sipping my coffee, half listening to a podcast when my phone automatically connected to her car's Bluetooth. Standard stuff, right? Except, instead of playing my podcast, the speakers crackled and I heard voices. Not just any voices. Natalie's voice, and my best friend Ethan. At first, I thought it was a saved voicemail or maybe a butt dial recording. But then I realized this was live. A call. My heart did this weird stutter step thing, confusion morphing into a sinking feeling I still can't fully describe. So, Friday then? Ethan's voice, casual, too casual. Yeah, Natalie replied, with a softness I hadn't heard directed at me in years. Liam's got that late meeting. We'll have the place to ourselves. I nearly swerved into a parked car. The conversation continued, every word a dagger. Jokes about how clueless I was. References to last time and how they couldn't wait to pick up where they left off. I felt like I was watching my life unravel in real time, except I wasn't watching, I was hearing it, trapped in a moving vehicle, nowhere to escape. By the time the call ended, I was parked on the side of the road, hands shaking, stomach in knots. A part of me wanted to believe I misunderstood. That there was some innocent explanation. But deep down, I knew. I knew my wife and my best friend were planning something that had nothing to do with friendship or business meetings. I sat there for what felt like hours, replaying every interaction, every late night, work call, every time Ethan had shown up unannounced with a six-pack and a grin. The signs had been there, I didn't want to see them. But now I couldn't hear it. That's when something inside me snapped, not in a rage-fueled way, but with a cold, focused clarity I didn't know I was capable of. I wasn't going to confront them. Not yet. If they thought I was clueless, I'd play the part. Because if I was going to lose everything I thought I knew, I'd be damned if I didn't take control of how the story ended. And so began the quietest, most calculated week of my life. Walking back into my house that evening was like stepping onto a stage where everyone knew their lines, except me. Natalie greeted me with her usual peck on the cheek, asking about my day like she wasn't plotting betrayal with the person I once called my brother. I smiled, played my role, asked her if she wanted Thai or pizza for dinner, pretending my appetite hadn't been replaced by a gnawing pit of dread. Over the next few days, I became an actor in my own life, and honestly, I deserved an award for that performance. I laughed at Ethan's texts, nodded along to Natalie's weekend plans, all while documenting everything. First step? I backed up the Bluetooth call log from her car. Turns out Natalie wasn't exactly cautious. Multiple calls to Ethan, all conveniently timed when I was busy or working late. I synced her calendar to mine. Guess who had recurring meetings every other Friday? I bought a small recorder, one of those discreet ones that could fit in a pocket or sit unnoticed on a shelf. Planted it in the living room where most of their conversations seemed to happen based on the call I overheard. By Thursday, I had enough recordings to make my stomach churn. Flirty whispers, inside jokes at my expense, even discussions about how much longer they could keep it up before they'd need to come clean or spin some narrative where I was the bad guy. The audacity was almost impressive. But here's the thing, I wasn't just going to catch them. I wanted them to feel it. To realize that the man they thought was too trusting, too naive, had been 10 steps ahead while they played checkers on a chessboard. So I set the trap. Friday morning, I kissed Natalie goodbye like I always did. Told her my late meeting might run even later. She smiled, actually smiled, thinking she had me fooled. What she didn't know was that I had already swapped out my work laptop for a decoy and arranged to work remotely from a hotel across town. A hotel with a perfect view of my driveway thanks to a friend who worked security there. I watched from that window like a hunter in a blind. At 6:45 p.m. Ethan's car pulled up. Right on schedule. Casual as ever, like he wasn't walking straight into the jaws of his stupidity. They didn't waste time. Lights dimmed. Wine poured. I captured every moment with my camera's zoom lens, not because I needed proof at this point, but because I wanted them to see later just how exposed they'd been. But I wasn't done. While they got comfortable, I remotely accessed her home network. Natalie never was great with passwords. Our anniversary wasn't exactly NSA-level security. I uploaded copies of the recordings and photos to a cloud drive titled For When Trust Dies. Then I sent them both a message. Group text. Simple. Clean. Smile for the camera. I watched from my hotel window as Natalie practically leapt off the couch, her phone glowing in her hand. Ethan scrambled to the window, peering out into the night like he could see me through sheer guilt. Panic looks good on traders. My phone buzzed nonstop calls, texts, desperate attempts to spin the story before I could respond. I didn't answer. Instead, I forwarded the cloud link. One to Natalie. One to Ethan. And, for good measure, one to my lawyer who'd been prepped earlier that week. By midnight, I was sipping whiskey in that hotel room watching the two people who shattered my life implode in real time. The next morning, I woke up in that hotel room with sunlight streaming through the curtains and a phone that looked like it had survived a war. 23 missed calls from Natalie. 14 from Ethan. A barrage of texts ranging from frantic apologies to desperate denials. I didn't bother reading most of them. Once you hear the truth straight from the source, there's no need to sift through the rubble of excuses. Instead, I took my time. Ordered breakfast. Sat on the balcony with my coffee, watching commuters rush through their routines, blissfully unaware that two people in my life were probably tearing each other apart trying to figure out how everything went so wrong for them. Around noon, I finally drove home. I half expected to find Natalie waiting on the porch or Ethan's car parked like a bad omen. But the driveway was empty. The house eerily quiet. When I stepped inside, it hit me, the faint smell of her perfume, the wine glasses still sitting on the counter, a throw blanket crumpled on the couch where betrayal made itself comfortable just hours before. Natalie wasn't home. But she'd left a note. Classic. Liam, we need to talk. Please don't do anything rash. I can explain everything. I laughed out loud. Explain? There was no explaining your way out of a conspiracy caught on tape. I grabbed a suitcase from the closet, not for me, but for her. Methodically, I packed her essentials. Clothes, toiletries, that framed photo of us she always said was her favorite. I left it on top like a cherry on a rotten sundae. By the time she walked through the door an hour later, pale and wide-eyed, her bag was sitting by the entrance. Liam, please. I held up a hand. Save it. Check your email. She blinked, confused, until her phone buzzed. I had sent her a formal notice, separation papers drafted and ready, along with a polite reminder that all communication going forward would be through my lawyer. Her face crumbled. You're doing this? After everything we've built? Built? I echoed. You mean what I built while you and Ethan were busy tearing it down? She reached out, but I stepped back. Take your bag, Natalie. Go stay with whoever's left willing to look you in the eye. She didn't argue. Maybe because she knew there was nothing left to say. As the door closed behind her, I felt nothing. No anger. No sadness. Just a strange, hollow relief. Ethan tried his luck next. Showed up 2 days later, knocking like we were still friends. I didn't open the door. Just slid a USB drive through the mail slot, a copy of everything I had on him. A text followed, lose my number. I heard from mutual friends that his long-term girlfriend dumped him the moment she saw the files. Good. In the weeks that followed, I focused on reclaiming my space. I changed the locks. Donated every piece of decor Natalie had picked out. Jasper, my loyal golden retriever, seemed to sense the shift. He stopped waiting by the door, stopped whining at night. Even he knew we were better off. I wasn't naive enough to think healing would be quick. But every day without their shadows felt like a step back toward myself. I started running again. Picked up old hobbies I'd shelved to accommodate a marriage that was more performance than partnership. I reconnected with people who actually cared. Update. It's been a month since the door closed behind Natalie, and in that time, I've discovered that silence can be the loudest sound in the world, but in the best way possible. For the first week, I half expected more fireworks. Some grand gesture. Natalie showing up with tears, or Ethan sending one of those long, rambling texts about brotherhood and mistakes. But neither came knocking again. Instead, they retreated into the shadows of mutual shame, or maybe mutual blame. Word travels fast in a small town, and apparently their little alliance didn't survive the fallout. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that Natalie and Ethan had a spectacular falling out. Something about ruined lives, and this wasn't supposed to happen like this. I couldn't help but smirk when I heard that. Actions have consequences, who knew? With them out of my life, I turned my focus inward. Not in a dramatic, find yourself on a mountain kind of way, but in small, deliberate steps. I renovated the guest room, turned it into a personal studio where I could tinker with projects I'd put off for years. Things Natalie always dismissed as a waste of time. Funny how reclaiming physical space helps clear mental space too. Jasper became my shadow, following me from room to room, tail wagging like he knew we were both breathing easier. Dogs have a way of sensing when the energy shifts, and mine had shifted entirely. I also started therapy. Best decision I've made in a long time. There's something freeing about unpacking years of overlooked red flags and realizing that trusting people isn't a flaw, but trusting the wrong people repeatedly is a lesson you can't afford to ignore. Natalie did try one last move, an email titled Closure. I stared at it in my inbox for a solid hour before deleting it without opening. Whatever closure she thought she could offer, I didn't need it. I wasn't looking for explanations from someone who had already shown me exactly who they were. Ethan? Radio silence. Which suited me just fine. I reconnected with old friends, the kind who didn't come with hidden agendas or fake smiles. Turns out, when you're no longer covering for a toxic marriage, you have a lot more energy to invest in people who genuinely care. Financially, I was solid. I made sure that before I ever sent Natalie packing, my lawyer handled the separation like a pro, clean, efficient, no loopholes for her to crawl through. One evening, I found myself at a local open mic night, something I never would have done before. I didn't perform, but I listened. And for the first time in a long while, I felt inspired. Not by someone else's story of heartbreak, but by the realization that mine wasn't a tragedy. It was a rebirth. I walked out of that cafe with a strange sense of gratitude, not for what Natalie and Ethan did, but for what their betrayal forced me to become. Stronger. Sharper. Free. I know there's still a road ahead. Healing isn't linear, and trust won't come easy next time. But that's okay. Because now, I'm no longer the man who blindly trusted the people closest to him. I'm the man who listens to actions, to instincts, and sometimes to a Bluetooth connection that reveals everything you need to know. Update. 2 months out and the dust had more than settled. It had been swept out the door along with every trace of Natalie and Ethan's betrayal. But here's the thing no one tells you about surviving something like this. Once the chaos dies down, you're left standing in the quiet with nothing but yourself. And that's where the real work begins. I didn't want revenge anymore. That phase burned out quickly, replaced by something far more important, rebuilding. Not just my home, but my identity. For years, I had been Natalie's husband or Ethan's best friend. My name always came with an attachment, a label tied to people who didn't deserve the space they occupied in my life. So I started redefining who Liam Carter actually was. I signed up for a woodworking class, something I'd always wanted to try but was told was too messy for our pristine home. Turns out there's something deeply therapeutic about turning raw, broken pieces into something solid and purposeful. Kind of poetic, really. Jasper became my partner in crime, riding shotgun on spontaneous road trips. We explored trails I never knew existed, camped under stars without cell service, and for once, I felt disconnected in all the right ways. Social media? Wiped clean. I deleted old photos, unfollowed toxic connections, and stopped curating a life for anyone else's approval. What remained was real, the people who reached out not because they were curious about the drama, but because they genuinely cared. One of those people was Claire. We'd worked together years ago, lost touch when life got busy. She sent a simple message after hearing whispers of what happened. If you ever need a friend who doesn't come with history, I'm here. We grabbed coffee. Then dinner. No pressure, no expectations, just two people sharing stories and laughing in a way that felt effortless. Claire didn't ask about Natalie or Ethan. She asked about me. What I wanted next. What made me feel alive. I didn't have all the answers, but for the first time I was excited to figure it out. Back at home, I finished transforming the garage into a workspace. Built my first coffee table from scratch. It wasn't perfect, a little uneven, a few scratches, but it was mine. A tangible reminder that imperfect beginnings still hold value. I also started journaling. Not the Dear Diary kind, but reflections. Lessons learned. I wrote down the moment I realized that love without respect is just dependency in disguise. That trust isn't given once, it's earned daily. Every morning, I woke up a little lighter. The nightmares stopped. The constant replaying of Bluetooth echoes faded into background noise. Then, out of nowhere, I received a letter. Handwritten. No return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable, Natalie's. I hesitated for a moment before opening it. Inside was a single line. I hope you find happiness, even if it's not with me. No apology. No excuses. Just that. I folded the letter and tossed it into the fireplace. Watched it burn until it was nothing but ash, a fitting end to words that carried no weight anymore. Because I wasn't looking for happiness from anyone else. I was building it piece by piece with my own 2 hands. And for the first time in years, that was more than enough. Update. 3 months have passed since I uncovered the truth that shattered my marriage and ended a decade-long friendship. If you'd told me back then that I'd come out of this stronger, I would have laughed bitterly. But here I am, standing taller than I ever thought possible. The biggest surprise? How quiet resilience feels. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's waking up and realizing you're no longer waiting for the next betrayal. It's sipping coffee in a house that finally feels like a sanctuary, not a stage set for lies. After burning Natalie's letter, I expected a wave of emotion, anger, sadness, something. But all I felt was closure. Real closure. The kind you give yourself when you stop expecting it from the people who hurt you. Claire and I have continued to grow closer. It's not a rebound. It's not filling a void. It's two people who understand the value of honesty and space. We spend weekends exploring new places, cooking disastrous meals together, and laughing more than I thought I was capable of. Jasper's become a symbol of this new chapter, loyal, constant, and always ready for the next adventure. We've made it a ritual to hit a new trail every Sunday, no matter the weather. There's something about muddy boots and fresh air that makes the past feel smaller in the rearview mirror. I published a blog post about my experience, not naming names, just sharing the journey from betrayal to rebuilding. The response was overwhelming. Messages poured in from strangers thanking me for putting into words what they couldn't. It reminded me that pain isn't unique, but surviving it with grace can be. Work has been thriving too. With my head clear, I've taken on projects I'd once shied away from. My boss noticed. A promotion's on the horizon, but more importantly, I finally feel confident in my abilities, not second-guessing every move because of voices that used to belittle my ambitions. As for Natalie and Ethan, they're ghosts now. I hear snippets through the grapevine, rumors of fallout, burned bridges, and friendships lost. But I don't dwell on it. Their story no longer intersects with mine. I've learned that healing isn't about forgetting. It's about remembering without pain. About looking back and seeing lessons instead of wounds. The garage workspace has evolved into more than a hobby zone. I've started crafting custom furniture for friends and neighbors. What began as therapy has turned into passion, maybe even a side business down the line. Every piece I build is a reminder broken things aren't worthless. They're just waiting for someone to see their potential. And that's exactly what I've done with my life. I don't know what the future holds, no one does. But I do know this, I'm no longer defined by what was done to me. I'm defined by how I chose to rise after it. So here's to moving forward with purpose, with peace, and with a heart that knows its worth. Update. 6 months. Half a year since I heard the voices that flipped my world upside down. And now? I barely recognize the man who sat frozen in that car, listening to his wife and best friend plan his humiliation. I used to think betrayal would define me, that I'd carry it like a scar everyone could see. But here's the truth I never expected, betrayal doesn't mark you unless you let it. What really defines you is what you build after the wreckage. Today, I woke up in a home filled with light, not shadows. Jasper greeted me like he does every morning, tail wagging, eyes bright, reminding me that loyalty still exists in this world even if it comes with 4 legs and a wet nose. Claire is still part of my life. We're not rushing anything, there's a beauty in taking things slow, in letting trust grow naturally instead of forcing it to fill a void. She's become a partner in the truest sense, someone who cheers for my wins and sits with me through the quiet moments. The garage? It's now a full-fledged workshop. I launched a small business crafting custom pieces, and to my surprise, orders keep rolling in. Each table, shelf, or chair I create feels like another brick in the foundation of the life I chose for myself, a life built on authenticity, not appearances. I still get the occasional reminder of the past, a mutual friend mentioning Natalie in passing, or seeing Ethan's name pop up in a people you may know suggestion. But those reminders don't sting anymore. They're just proof of how far I've come. I've learned to celebrate the small victories. A peaceful morning. A project finished. A laugh shared without the weight of suspicion. These moments, once rare, are now the fabric of my daily life. Looking back, I realized that connecting to that Bluetooth wasn't the worst thing that ever happened to me. It was the best, because it forced me to see the truth. It pushed me to reclaim my voice, my space, my future. If you're listening to this and you've been betrayed by a partner, a friend, or anyone you trusted, know this, their actions don't get to write your story. You do. You get to decide if you stay in the rubble or if you start building something better. So here I am, standing in a life that's quieter, simpler, but infinitely more mine. I'm not a victim of what happened. I'm the author of what came next. And now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever faced a moment where the truth shattered your world, only to realize it set you free? Share your story in the comments. Let's remind each other that sometimes, the worst day of your life can be the beginning of the best chapter. Hope you enjoyed this story as much as I do. Help this small channel grow by hitting that like button, subscribing, and sharing with your friends. Every bit of support means the world. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.